Well, there we go. Boom, and we're live. Well, that's what I'm saying. Tonight, I just want to, like we were saying, Rich. Whoever joins us, whoever doesn't join us, I think, like I say, let's just get into discussion about meritocracy. Now, my understanding of meritocracy goes back a long way. I mean, as you're aware, I kind of have a bit of understanding about Chinese history, and it all kind of started back in the Han Dynasty, and it was. My personal feeling of it, and this is how it relates to the Safe Network, and this is just a general overview, is that I think meritocracy is essential, because I think we base this around what we were saying before we went live. I mean, N99 has been completely based on the principle of what you create, you'll get paid for. And I think where it's gone wrong in society at the moment has always been middlemen. That's why people point to the fact, meritocracy doesn't work in society, because it's all, it leads to elites. But that's because of middlemen. But if you have a safe network, which is completely opened, where you'll be judged by what you are, and that alone, and no middlemen, that to me, as it should be. I don't think it should be anything other than that. And I think it's a really, as we were saying just before we go live, I think it's a really live issue with what's going on in the Safe Network at the moment, because we're coming, the Safe Network, as any new technology, is facing the same argument that's gone throughout history. It's, which is the same argument we're discussing now. Are people worth what they are on their merit, or should it be something that other people should look down and reward them for, because of how they feel as a third party? Other people below them or around them should be rewarded, and that's the argument that's coming up with our new technology. As much as it came up with the printing press, as much as it's come out with the Greeks and the Chinese, and it's just an age-old problem. But here we are in 2015, and this is a relevant question for a safe network, because this is my point. I think for the first time we're going to have a completely open network where no humans involved, and we've got the potential to have no middlemen. So that my point of it is, why build middlemen at all when you've got a network that has no middlemen?
Yeah. Some of what you were talking about reminded me of a friend of mine that just returned from the United Arab Emirates, and over there it's very much a caste system. If you're not an Emirati, then you are definitely second-class citizen. If you're in line to get some food or in line at the bank, it doesn't matter, you're going to get cut in front of, and it just goes downhill from there. And when you have a system that's based on an entitlement, which is what their system is completely, it's an entitlement system where if you're an Emirati, if you're a child growing up in that system, you automatically look at anybody who, number one, is not a Muslim as a second-class human being, and that you're worthless, really. You're an infidel, and they can step on you. For example, my friend, when he started his class, the first question one of the kids asked, and these are middle schoolers, he said, "Are you Muslim?" And he said, "No." And the kid said, "Well, then we don't have to listen to you." And it makes me wonder, in these types of societies, what's it going to look like later on when these kids grow up, And meritocracy alone is, that's the way it ought to be. And because if you don't add value to the network or to life in general, you shouldn't expect what the person who's busting their ass all day has, right? But that said, we've talked on this network before about what's going to happen when McDonald's and all the other fast food industries go completely automated, and you have basically a system where all the service industry is being replaced by automated robots and AI. And what's going to happen at that point, because there's going to be a huge fallout of people who haven't created anything digitally that they can upload to the Safe Network and get paid for. And so it almost seems like it's going to be a tricky transition. Like there's going to have to be a safety net for those people who aren't, haven't figured out a way to make a living at that point. But what I see in the Safe Network, it's the perfect transition protocol, right? Because at that point, when the network goes live and people are adding value to the network with their creativity and getting paid for it, that's the purest form of meritocracy. And and to add to it, I know the easy question, the one that you said David Yamanaka brought up, is what do we do with people who are adding content that they didn't create and getting paid for it? Having a system where you can watermark it and to prove that this content is yours, and so that portals and aggregate services like N99 will only point towards the data that is provably belongs to the artist that created it. So that's pretty cool. Again, supporting a meritocracy and going against the grain that you see in some of these other countries, like I was talking about the UAE. We have to disintermediate these countries and these organizations that do this. How you doing? How you doing, Daniel?
Hey, Rich. How are you?
It's good to see you. I'm sorry, you prefer Kali, right?
Yeah, usually.
Usually, right.
For fun.
Cool.
But I was listening to a little about what you were saying, and I just wanted to say, like, along the lines of what you're saying is that earning a living should, we're humans, right? So, at a basic level, what a living means shelter and some food and emotional comfort, right? Emotional stability. So, and I think everyone should be able to get one of those. And if things are automated, then in the first place you're born, right? So then you should be entitled to the earth in the capacity that you got a place to live and you got food to eat and emotional support. And so if everything is automated and people really don't have to work, you should be allowed to go to McDonald's and get the hamburger so long as you don't preclude another person from getting a hamburger.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
completely.
Yeah, so what we're talking about is a base level income, which I totally agree with. Base level, an ability to survive just because you're alive, right? How you doing, Francis? I don't think we've ever met. It's good to see you.
Good. Hi.
Hello, Francis. It's been a long time since we've spoken.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi,
Hey, Frank. Glad you made it.
It's Daniel who invited me to attend, so I'm happy to be here.
No, as I was saying, I go back to what you were saying, Rich, and I think one of the arguments that's used against meritocracy as a general philosophy is that in time people will look back and go, oh, but if you haven't got any rewards and you haven't got any material wealth around you, that's because you're undeserving, and how come you couldn't create something? But my argument against this has always been, and I think it's essential to what's always driven me, is that every human being on this planet has the potential to be a creative or a content provider. Now that content can be provided in a myriad of ways, and it doesn't have to be, where it's art or music. It can be what you have in the knowledge and skills. And even beyond this, my point, and this is why I say it's essential, I think it's really possible. How I feel about human beings is that we shouldn't exclude anybody, whether they have a disability physically, mentally. Everybody has something to contribute, and if you haven't got something, then this is the age-old analogy that well, go ahead and learn something. And this is the whole point. This is what the essence of the SAFEnet offers, because it is completely, as Daniel was saying, a completely autonomous system and no middlemen. Then it should always reward people who, and everybody has that possibility to be able to create something. And it should just be, as you were saying quite rightly, Rich, it should be down to the person who creates it. This is exactly the same evolution that arose from when we had the printing press, because before then everything was owned by the church and by religion, so all artwork was owned by religious, or the rich. And suddenly the printing press came along, and artists said, well, do you know what, I can put my signature to something, and that's me saying this is my voice and my opinion. And that's where we are right now. As I was saying before, we're facing the same discussion that's gone throughout history. It's just we're replacing the signature from the printing press to watermarking now. But it should always be down to the person who creates, and that's why it should be meritocracy, because meritocracy isn't just about creating products, it's about the merit you do and whatever that may be. And I think that the bottom line of where the SafeNet offers is it's basically going to come down to, it should be down to what you're creating as a human being, because it's not maybe about creating great pieces of artwork or great pieces of music, but if you're as a human being giving out goodwill and good content, then you're going to get goodwill and good content back. If you give out, it's an age-old one, it's a historic one, if you give out bad negative energy to people, you're going to get bad negative energy back. And this is the play of what the SafeNet offers, because there's no human intervention, it's completely automatic. Hi, how you doing, Paul? How you doing, my friend?
Doing good, how are you?
I'm really good, man. It's kind of chimes into something that we were discussing in our little chat recently about meritocracy. We're being discussing about the meritocracy and how that sort of like, you know, fits into the safe network. So it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts, because I know you've got a lot of opinions about this.
Oh no. Well, I mean, put me on the spot here. I don't have any thoughts on meritocracy right now. I was kind of thinking about it. I'm like, well, if somebody's disabled, what do you do about people who are disabled or unable to contribute? So that's my only thought right now.
If I could add, Paul, would you defer to me?
Absolutely.
Thank you. I wanted to mention is that very much something that was inspired by what you just said, Tim, is that you never know when someone will come up with something that everybody could use or that benefits all the people. So in terms of meritocracy, and I mentioned, I began talking about something like everyone is born, so therefore there's some purpose for you, and you deserve a portion of the earth in the first place. So you should be fed, and you should have some place to live, and you should not be subjected to emotional distress. So that's the first thing, right? And then you never know when that person will merit more. And so they should be accommodated for that sole possibility that maybe one day something that they do would be extraordinarily important to everyone else. And even if that day never comes, you just never know. So it's important that the people are accounted for and no one is left behind. And I'm just thinking about ways how to create a meritocracy. And I thought about how what's most important is what people think that they need at a certain time. And so I think it's possible to be able to vote on the person or on a group as to who deserves to have more resources for what they merit. And if all the people are equal in terms of everyone is entitled to be able to survive and to become productive for the people, then it starts there, and then you could vote and choose what's more useful.
You know, that made me think when you were talking about the people. Hold on a second. Sorry. One second.
Has anyone got anything else they would like to concur? Francis, I'd like to hear your opinions on this subject. No? Okay.
No.
Rich, go on in.
What I was going to say is that you had brought up that early on the church was in charge of the handing out or they were in control of the art. All the art belonged to them. Most of the gold belonged to them, and also they were the ones who set up the orphanages and the places where people who couldn't get by, they turned to the church because that was the place you could go to get some food, to get some shelter, and this idea of creating now that everything is basically becoming tied into a network, and we can communicate with each other, and I guarantee you, if one of us was in a hard spot and we all knew about it, we could contribute resources to get one or the other out of the hard spot. As we get to know each other and as the community evolves and grows, there's room for a place in the Safe Network to become sort of a, as Daniel was saying, a place where there would be, let's say, you could opt in to putting 10% of your SafeCoin into a large pot, and it would take a voting pool to decide how that pot is released and when. And so you could have basically a function of the church, being created right into the Safe Network, where if you ever ran into a severely hard time, you could make your case to the group that is contributing to this large pot to release some of that to you in order to buy food, just to survive. It couldn't be something frivolous, and there would have to be some kind of trust built in. Obviously people would take advantage of this if they did. So it would be a situation where you kind of get to know the peers and the people in the community. And naturally, these are the things that develop in small communities and small neighborhoods. But in a global community, I can see this also starting to happen in a different way with something like the Safe Network. So I don't know. What do you think about that? I hadn't really thought about that up until today.
Well, Richard, I would always. My point would be, I think this is how I feel. Like I said to you before we went live, I think it was very well discussed, and I think, to be honest, I think Daniel covered it very well at the last ANTS meeting about the whole P2P discussion that's going on at the moment. But I think generally that I love the idea of pool funding, and I think initially maybe if the Safe Network was to give resources to the initial for the first 6 months or up to a certain leverage point of coin usage, and we reward people initially, great. But that can't go on forever, because as I think what I think will happen in the future anyway, if that did happen and the Safe was just to reward people forever and ever and ever, well, you're going to get to the point of inflation. And I think anyway what will happen, and this is how I feel about it above it all anyway, because I think that people should prepare themselves in a world where the Safe Network doesn't maybe reward people. So think in terms of building apps, think in terms of farming, rather than thinking of just putting content out and being rewarded for it. And then if the network does reward for it, great. But what to bear in mind is, I mean, this is I try to sort of think it, kind of think a little bit in the future and think, well, the Safe Network offers the potential anyway that maybe one network would form that would reward, and like you said, Rich, would have almost like an old feudal system, and have a kind of a collective pool. But I can tell you something else. There'll be another forking, and there'll be another Safe Net that will say, we're not going to do that. We're going to go down our way. And this is how I see the future anyway. I think there'll be myriad. Go on,
I was thinking about what I was saying in terms of an application, really, not like the Safe Network having this built into it.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about it more of an app itself. And along the terms or ideas of apps, I was just thinking, and I'm sure that this is something that maybe Dali has thought of already, but a lynda.com style thing on the Safe Network would be extremely important. I use that all the time, and I know there's all kinds of content providers, with their tips and tricks on how to use this software, that software, this latest camera, and having it set up in a lynda.com style system, an application really for the Safe Network that allows people to upload their tutorials. And then the tutorials could be ranked in such a way that the tutorials that benefit people the most are the ones that are the ones that come up first. And I think it's anyway, but that's an aside from what we were kind of discussing with the meritocracy. But in a way, it isn't, because really the ability to learn online. I think lynda.com, there are people in the world that's cost prohibitive to pay $25 a month. To get tutorials, professional tutorials. We talk about like the other 6 billion, all the people throughout India. $25 a month is going to feed their family for a month. And so but if you had something on the Safe Network that allowed people to start to learn to use the latest, and I know YouTube's filled in this gap a lot, but there's a big difference between if you had something set up in a way where the tutorials followed a format that was consistent, so that much like lynda.com. Anyway,
That's a really good point about tutorials should be consistent, if possible.
right, yeah, you'd almost have to have training for the people that create them to say, okay, this is how it be done, and then you could have people that actually are willing to moderate, or I don't know. There might be somebody who's very genius but has a terrible time talking in front of a camera. Yeah, I don't know. So that takes a collaborative effort. Anyway, that was just an aside. Is there anything in particular you want to discuss outside of that? The idea of meritocracy and.
I wanted to mention that, still on the subject of meritocracy, is that I think for small communities it's possible to establish this, like you mentioned, and to test it as a software. We can do it easily. And I would admit that, considering the origins of the Safe Network is a crowd sale that pretty much tapped into the resources of a community of software developers. I think there's just an early stage. It's pretty much the roots of the of our collaboration here is that there's that a group of people from Scotland did tap into the global resource pool of people based on the technologies that they've discovered and implemented to some extent. So, and I think so that's focused around building this software. So I think then, like, for example, we are a collective already. We have a Safe Network collective, and if we wanted to, we could essentially establish the Safe Network collective pool and then vote on distribution of funds from that pool. And because we're all interested in each other's success, we would not be adverse to contributing to that pool to become members of that pool. And essentially, it doesn't need to be there just only in dire situations, but could also be there in situations where, let's say, someone is supposed to focus on a certain task and not focus on other tasks. Therefore, maybe that person isn't in a position to be collecting money from some other place. So the pool could allocate those funds, and that person can be totally focused just only on that project. Or maybe someone is in a dire situation and they need a bailout, and the abuse wouldn't happen because, like I said, in a small community we can figure it out that it works, and then we'll probably notice that, like the church and like most institutions that become ubiquitous, they become corrupt because people with different motives enter the scene and they figure out and game the system, and there's too many people, so you can't really keep track of everyone, and then the outliers start to happen. So in small communities, like we already have ourselves right now. We have the Safe Network. I mean, essentially all the people of the forum are pretty much a collective. I mean, we help each other out to the extent that our project continues to go, right? And that's obvious. Down from the suggestion, to the connection, to the small tip, to the content producer so far, and that's been happening. And so I think we've already got a little bit of this meritocracy thing happening in our own network. If only, I mean, that's even before our codes are even launched. So I think I think everyone deserves an applause for, like, I mean that like figuratively, that like it's pretty cool that we actually have a real community coming along. I mean, we even meet up here, and it's really exciting. I'm really glad to come here each Saturday, for example. Every second Saturday. So it's like I think what we're talking about is we're pretty much saying we're fish and we're in the water. Like we're fish in the water. I think so.
Yeah, go on, Rich. Is there anything you want to chip in with Rich, or?
I think that's a really good point. Yeah, this is all building, and the beauty of it is that um, you know the applications that can be built to facilitate the communities and bring them closer together and like help us focus on the things that we want to get done. This is all good. I don't know. I'd like to hear some from Francis. I'd like to hear what's going on up in Canada.
Sure. Do you have any questions?
Yeah. How are things up there? Like, what's the latest news from up there?
I don't know. Right now I'm working on the API docs. That's my main. Gonna release it Monday. So it makes it easy for people to see what type of request you can do. So the NFS API and the DNS. And I'm hoping to start my first app soon. So my project is going to be a simple note-taking app where you can create notes and store them on the SAFEnetwork. And I'm going to make a tutorial step by step how to build that. So.
Cool. Hey Brady. Francis, that's Brady that just joined us. He's a local and.
Thank you.
Oh.
How's it going, Brady?
Doing good. How are you doing? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, just about, man. Yeah, that's cool. No, I think the thing is as well. I mean, I think we'd all basically agree that I think this is what my kind of sort of my general sort of overview on the meritocracy one is it's exactly the basis that David Earl in particular has built this on, is that the SAFEnetwork should be an equal ability, whether you're a kid in Africa or some billionaire in the middle of Texas. The whole point is you'll be rewarded for the effort that you're going to put on it, and that's been almost intrinsically built, and that should be an open one. We should, it's one of the things that I've always found frustrating in the world we live in right now, is that everyone talks about everyone's got an equal chance, but man, try growing up in the middle of Africa and saying, well, you can't speak you haven't got the internet, you can't speak English, and your environment isn't suited for these things. And that's one of the things that I think we've got the ability right now as a community, as Daniel was quite rightly saying. We can shape this, and this is why I think it is crucial that we try to make it. If we're going to talk about meritocracy, let's try to make this SAFEnetwork as to open it to everybody, and let's not make it just an English-speaking Western world, first world thing. Let's try to open it up, and let's really be making meritocracy or merit in the sense of let's open it up to everybody, and that is the essence of the SAFEnetwork, and it's that excites me as a human being, because I just think it's a real, as I always say, it's an epoch moment, because it gives everybody who's got any kind of, as this is an old-fashioned English word, any bit of gumption to basically say, well, I've got a chance now, no more middlemen. And to me, let's open it up to the whole world, because that's going to be truly, when we can judge it whether it's a meritocratic thing, that we're not sitting here in 10 years' time and it's just full of Americans. I want this to be full of Malaysians. I want Africans. I want everybody. I want every shade, every color, every language. I want everybody in the world. Do you know what I mean? To be in this, and this, you know what I mean? That's how it should be. That's a sign of a real, true meritocracy.
Regarding merits, so merits is the metrics, and I think to, like I was saying, to have a small test would be like to choose some kind of subject of activity. I don't know, gardening, let's call it, right? Just to keep it simple for now. So then, based on here's actually an obvious metaphor. So in the meritocracy of gardening, if you take care of your plant and you're responsible, you're going to grow fruits or vegetables, or you're going to have herbs coming out of your plant, right? So you have a direct response from your merits. You responsibly took care of the plant, and it responsibly gave you back its fruit, right? So then, so there is obvious. So then, so consider in human society, for example, this is probably another obvious one, is financial trading productive? Is there any merit to financial trading? And I'm not going to argue yes or no, but I'm just saying that that's a controversial subject to consider. So I think if so then we can have like this very broad purpose that there's a pool and we can decide without having a predefined goal in mind. But I think it's more, but that becomes more complex and then subject to interpretation. But if there's something concrete, like here's a perfect example, building the SAFE network. That's an obvious thing. You get rewarded for giving all the people a decentralized and totally secure and no third party involved file sharing system and communication system. So so in exchange for that, there's X percentage of the coins from that project, let's say, right? So then, I mean, another thing is if we realize going down the road that eventually those coins will enter back into the system and then come out into the hands or into the groups of unknown parties, right? And then they can choose how they determine to share the resources. You see what I mean? So it's like, it's almost what is today most important, tomorrow may not be so important. See, because once we have a safe network, the perception becomes that it's less important to worry about building a safe network because we already have one, now it's something else. And I think that's the progress of people, I mean, as a civilization, is we've solved something, we move past it, and then maybe something breaks on the side, and then we go back and fix it, and then keep moving. And that would be, okay, safe network's working, we're living life and storing our data, and then we figured out, oh, we need an extra functionality, and then we go back to the developers of Safe Network and say, we need help, we need this feature, and here's the merit reward for it. So if so I'm thinking very much along the lines of like how to start implementing this to try it, to create a, I don't want to call it governance because the last thing that we should be doing is governing each other, but I think that that if we can logically prove that if we contributed to some kind of pool, that if we can logically prove that those funds would not be allocated against our wishes, let's say, like I'm not saying about just because someone's a certain religion or something. I'm saying if it's against the desires of the goal in mind, then it could be trusted, and that's a system to be tested, to be tried. So, and I'm like more and more gearing towards like how to actually implement such a system and try it and see what it produces.
I know this is going with what you had mentioned earlier with the food idea. I've often thought that I have a friend who, if she had real dollars for her farm bill dollars, it would be absurd. She spends hours and hours a day on Farmville. And how hard would it really be to have an aquaponics system set up where it is being monitored in a game-like system, but in real life, like we were talking about with the hardware store, where you have a little flying bot that's actually being controlled by somebody anywhere in the world, and that's their job, is to help people find the hardware, and they could be working any store in the world, And then this likewise with aquaponics, where you would have a system that you have a complex system that needs to be monitored. You need to monitor the pH level of the soil and the water, the health of the fish, the health of the plant growth can be monitored. All the different levels of nitrogen and the like. If you had the system set up to where it was being monitored, and you actually had it set up in a game-like system where somebody's actually monitoring it, but earning points for successfully monitoring it and making sure that the plants are growing right and the fish are okay. Wouldn't that be an awesome game where somebody who's actually earning aquaponics cash, whatever it is, can be translated into SafeCoin for monitoring these systems, where you could create an aquaponics system that you sell you have a set price, and you know that once you get it, you don't really have to screw with it very much, except when this person says, okay, you need to reorder this just to put it in a device, or I don't know, you know what I'm saying, where you don't have to have like a hands-on intelligent person, except to maybe fill up some bottles here and there, and then somebody else somewhere else is actually doing the monitoring and getting paid. It's an idea. It could be expanded on to create a real-life interface, like Farmville-style rewards and gaming, where you actually have real productivity happening. I don't know.
Exactly, Rich, and the point being, I mean, that very principle, you can expound to everything. I mean, that's the point. Yeah. You go through production, you take that exact principle, outline it to everything. This is the point I was trying to make earlier on, because I have a lot of I know the potential that every human being, everybody in their mind has the potential to do something. That's exactly it. We can all contribute a skill, a knowledge. So it can sometimes, and just like me and Paul discussed about, sometimes there's a great value in just you're the guy who's wandered around and you just learned about nature, or you just wandered and you've learned some knowledge just from being peaceful. They should all be. This is the sign of a true meritocracy. And like you say, everything can be sent out. We can all. This is the thing. This is the real. The epoch and the inspiring thing about the SAFEnetwork being switched on. We're switching on something that we're having. Look at us ragtag bunch of people. We're shaping the future. The machine of the future, man. And that's what's really inspiring. Right now we're in that fortunate time in history where we have the potential to shape it all. And it really inspires me that the people around here in this conversation, we are the ones that are doing this, and it's not people in suits all sat there in offices going, ha, 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 how can we? No, that's, to me, this is how we're going to move this forward, because, as you said, Rich, we can implement what you just said on every level with everything. And that is a true evolutionary, revolutionary point of what the SAFEnetwork is. It changes it changes everything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that occurred to me is, like, you talk about people with disabilities, whether it be mental or physical. I mean, you think about people with physical disabilities are quite brilliant, and maybe they want to tag along with you if you want them to, because of your augmented reality. You're wearing augmented reality goggles, and they're living life vicariously through you. But not only that, they're seeing things that you would normally miss and letting you know, telling you. Like, let's just say somebody, all they do is, their knowledge of antiques is incredible, but they're now disabled and they can't go anywhere. And so now you're at a thrift store, you're at a estate sale, and you have your augmented reality glasses on, and you can have dozens of people who know everything about the stuff you're looking at, and immediately tell you, oh, that's this, and this is that, and this is extremely valuable. Please, tapping into the idea that people who are disabled will be able to live vicariously in a way, and I hate to say vicariously, because really they would supplement the lifestyle of whoever is part of their network. In other words, the person who's walking around with the VR goggles or the augmented reality goggles is also living vicariously in some respects through the disabled person, because that person's knowledge is coming to them directly. I don't know. It's just a thought. Where did Brady go?
So something very fascinating that I recently started contemplating on was this like I think how Kasparov was beaten by a chess machine or something like that, and then he made a battle with the machines, battle of the machines, where some like a soccer coach and a high school student or something like this. I'm sure I mixed them up, but someone, two unknown people winded up defeating the supercomputer at chess because they paired up with a computer, and so it's kind of like if you had a computer to help you play chess, you would always win. And Brady, are you trying to say something?
I was actually testing my mic. Can you hear
Yeah,
me?
we hear you good.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I had to
And
jump
feel
out of
free to
the
interrupt me if you had something to say from before.
Uh, I did, but I lost my train of thought. It was something about aquaponics because that's kind of like one of my things I've been really into and reading a lot about lately. But well, I'm sure we'll get back into it. So, but go ahead, keep talking.
Yeah.
Is it just me, but I think his mic volume is still way down?
No, it's
I can
low,
fix
but it
that.
sounds good.
I
Yeah.
can fix it. Hang on. Is that any better?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and so with respect to okay, if you had the assistance of a computer, let's say you had to take the SATs and you had a computer to help you, you'll probably get a perfect score. And that's a good thing because you have more smarter people. And it's not you cheated, you were very instrumental in using a computer to help you beat the test, right? And same with playing against the computer, like you won and you probably you got an awesome feeling. Like, what's the point in struggling to get good grades, and stuff like that. So um, so with regard to the computer, like you could have people who are knowledgeable can participate in creating that technology because like with Google and the way it reads images, they they read thousands and thousands of images and then learn. So imagine you helped add to the knowledge base, and then the knowledge isn't lost. In the future, the computer is going to know, and the computer can help you. And because you're a human, you could use intuition to realize when the computer is wrong, when the computer is right, stuff like that. Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
that got me inspired because I thought about it a little more, and it reminds me of when I was still very much building automatic trading strategies, and to see how the fund managers would start competing with the computer instead of the price. So instead of just letting the computer buy and sell whenever it wanted, they would try to anticipate when the computer would buy and sell, and then they would lose because of anticipating when the computer would buy and sell. So it's like playing the randomness game all over again. It's like you can't beat the price, so let the computer beat the price. And then you shouldn't fight the computer and try to beat the computer that's trying to beat the price. So it's better to just work together and merge than to fight it, I think.
Are you saying we shouldn't fight the singularity?
Yeah, basically that's what I'm saying.
Think of as along the lines of creating a platform, a protocol that would, or a game that would allow people to find their. Go ahead.
This is pretty awesome. That just dawned on me is like in communist Russia, the reason why communism is not going to work is because actually here's the actual reason fundamentally is people. I mean, like that's so cliche, but for real, here's the reason. People became lazy. I mean, okay, we just talked about things, like, everybody should have a house, everybody should have some food to eat and stuff. That's exactly what the communism thing tried to do. But then eventually people are just plain lazy, and people are, I mean, I'm not saying people are that, but that's what happens. That's just what occurs eventually. That people just, I wouldn't say that they're lazy, but they wind up not doing anything at all, pretty much, except just breathing and eating. And so
you don't have to. Why do it?
right. So that's kind of what became. And so, and not all people, but prevalently. But the one thing is that people always like to play games. So if we're controlling robots and stuff and doing farming work and things like that, then you won't have this laziness issue because people will come back to, they'll sit around their house that they got provided for. They won't starve, so they won't think about that. And then go and play a game and have fun, and that's always fun. It's always going to be fun.
Speaking of
One of the
that, have you guys seen FarmBot? FarmBot? No.
Bart?
Mhm.
What?
FarmBot.
No, I've never heard. No.
I couldn't hear you. Yeah,
My mic's
farm.
still pretty low.
Yeah, it's still really
No, I've
low.
never heard of FarmBot, Brady. Tell us more about FarmBot, Brady.
Oh, FarmBot is just a neat project I just found the other day. If you go Google it, it comes up. I think they just did a Kickstarter campaign or something, but it's a totally automated farming machine that you can build by just basic stuff at the hardware store. I mean, it's really neat. I like the idea. I was thinking about building one and just seeing how it works, but I believe all the software is open source and everything. It looks really cool.
Mhm.
But I see stuff like that being really big because I mean, I'm big into aquaponics, and if you had an aquaponics system in your living room, just even a small one with a FarmBot system set up, I mean, that'd be a neat little thing for everyone to have. And I don't know about gaming it in any way, but I'm a big advocate of distributed food production. I think it's going to be a really important thing as we reach 10 billion people in the next 30 years or so. It's going to be hard to handle, actually. I think distributed food production is going to be about one of the only solutions.
Yeah, this is fascinating. FarmBot.
Yeah. Danny, to go back to what the point you were making is that there's an old Confucian sort of way of thinking that says, it's either look at everything in life. Is it with nature or against nature? And what you see when you look at nature, you understand that there's everywhere you see it, well, not everywhere, but you can see it in reflection nature. There are things that we as humans, when we open our mouths and we release these noises, we call them parasites. But that concept goes on. There's always going to be people that are going to live on the edges and do nothing. That's the debate of humanity and where we've always been as a human species. What do we do with those people? Because you see it in nature. We always talk about ourselves as ants. I mean, the colony we spoke about a few times on this podcast. An ant can get infected, and that ant colony will work out amongst its intelligence, like, well, you're an infected ant, we're going to take you miles away from the colony and let you do what you have to do outside of it. But that you can't stop that because, we are a reflection. That's what I'm saying. We're with nature. We're not separate from nature, and nature reflects. There's always going to be these people that, because whatever the situation is, are going to be like that. It's knowing and discussing, and this is where we are right now, of what do we do as a species with those people that are always going to be like that. That you're never going to avoid parasites. The ant colony is never going to say, well, because we don't want them, we don't wish to have any diseases or anything like that. Then with enough belief, it's all going to not happen. No, nature's a bitch, and she'll come in and she'll give you the diseases, and she'll overrun your colony. So we've got to find intelligent ways to understand. Okay, we can't deny ourselves. We've got to find a ways of being intelligent and working out how do we react to those things. Sorry, that's me riffing. I mean, please feel free to reply. Anybody?
I think the solution is brainwashing people with subliminal messages in music. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I don't know. That was all I had. That was the best I had.
I was gonna reply with something a very sincere and also a little far-fetched as well. So thanks, Brady, for creating the right air for that answer. Is that I think people should be entitled to do absolutely nothing if that's what they choose to do, and I think that they shouldn't be punished for that either. And like I said, you never know when that person is gonna just come out with something epic, and maybe it took them relaxing and doing nothing all the time.
Well, I'll be honest. I think From the way I'm seeing things develop in the direction we're starting to head, I would say a lot of those lazier people, I mean, a lot of them just, they like sitting around just playing video games, just watching movies, just doing self-indulgent things that don't really contribute in any meaningful way. But at the same time, we're seeing things, incentivization systems for entertainment. I mean, games are starting to pay people. Listening to music, buying music is starting to incentivize people. And as we start seeing that snowball effect build, that's going to be the minimum wage jobs in the future. And those people who don't do anything are just going to be the lower paid people. The people actually get up and do something are, they're going to be compensated. I mean, you actually built something, you actually created something, you painted something, you went to school. I mean, that's going to be the thing. I mean, those are just going to be the lower paid workers in society. That's speculation, though.
Yeah, there's a comment. Paul McGee, he wrote the comment, lazy is a reaction, and as a result of no free will. So it makes sense, and that's really, I think it's factual, because I think people refuse to do things, and that's what laziness is. And they refuse to do because maybe it's impossible to do something. And so it's like, think about this one. Like, okay, people would say, go get a job. Well, all the jobs out there aren't productive, let's say. Let's say you just said that you consider all jobs not productive, so you don't want to do, and society will call you that you're lazy. So actually, society shouldn't put you on the street, but society should just let you not do. And until the time changes, then that's it. And so that's pretty simple to understand. And also, I think you should have the freedom of mobility. So it means that, like a hotel kind of system, you shouldn't be locked into one place. And be forced to stay there because you don't do things, and you should be able to still be mobile and explore the earth. Yeah.
I mean, you have to discover yourself and discover the world to figure out what you are going to want to do and what you're good at. I mean,
Speaking of discovery, I was just thinking a while back, this was, how hard would it be to create, once augmented reality goggles are, how hard will it be to create something that, if you have a program that is constantly identifying everything around you, and then if it doesn't recognize something, it alerts you, and you identify it if you know how to identify it, and if you don't, then it's examined and then put up into, basically to other people that are part of this program to look it up and say, okay, this is what that is. You pick up a piece of a machine, right? And you don't know what it is. You look at it. You can pick up a diode and look at it and say, what's the resistance of this resistor here? And things like that. The point is, I'm wondering, as this technology goes forward, it seems like that could be a fantastic real life game, where if you're part of that program or application and you're wearing your goggles and it's constantly looking around wherever you are, and if it doesn't recognize something, it alerts you. Please, what is this? You go over there and you pick it up and you look at it, and then you say, oh, this is what it is. If you're in a library and it doesn't recognize one of the covers of the books, it prompts you to open it up and look at the ISBN number. Things like this, whatever. Point is the idea of gaming life itself and making it to where you earn points because you're helping the machine gain knowledge, so to speak. You're helping the network grow its intelligence. And it seems like that could be a really great game that people in cities would love to be a part of. Anyway, maybe this is something you've already thought about. I don't know.
No, I think you're absolutely. Go on, Alec, go on.
No, Tim, you were going to say something, and I was going to say, Tim, you were going to say something.
No, my point I was just going to make that I think this, we all know this. really, this is only like all basic mathematics, like all basic problems. It's only a matter of scaling, and we know that if it was just our group of people right now, and we were all stuck on an island, we'd be able to sort every solution, every problem out. Fine. I mean, we'd have to introduce a couple of women, maybe, into the solution. But other than that one, do you know what I mean? We'll be able to sort everything out, because that's what I'm saying. We know on a small scale problems can be worked out. I mean this very subject we're just talking about right now. If one of us five was just sitting in the end of the beach, we wouldn't have a problem with that much. But if that person was sat at the end of the beach and every day just kept walking down and demanding every one of us, like, oh man, there's Brady, he's been catching fish all day, and I deserve part of his fish because I've got, well, that would work, but it's all about the goodwill and intent of whoever it was sat on the end of the beach. But we would solve it one way or the other. The problems become when it gets on the bigger scales. But why should that be any more complicated? Because to me, it's like if it can be solved on a small scale, then we can enlarge this to a big scale. It's not beyond our capabilities as human beings. I mean, we've got satellites in space looking down at us right now. We surely got the capacity in our minds and our, what we are as human beings to sort this problem out of scaling. Surely that's what to me, when I saw the Safe Network and what MadeSafe was doing, I thought, wow, this is a real key to maybe solving this solution, how we can scale this from a small number, which I've seen work on a personal level, and how we can work out to a larger scale. That's just, please. I mean, I'd love to hear anyone's thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think that we have a solution to our data. Our data. I wouldn't want to call it a problem, but I think to our data integrity, and that is the data is our knowledge that we've recorded into machines, right? And so Safe Network gives us a solution to that, and it I want to say prices, but it's not the best word. But essentially, it prices the resource of holding on to that data. So it's like, think about farming in the Safe Network. You have your computer at home, you keep it connected to the internet, and you defend that computer. And for you defending that computer that serves information to other people in the Safe Network, you're rewarded. So the demands of the network are predefined. I think that's important. The demands are that you keep a computer in good standing and connected with the correct software. So to construct a society, I think it's more like we now have this system that brings us together, and a model that proves that we can build something, assuming that all the criteria are known in advance, and then we don't know what we have to defend against, but we're humans, so we can figure it out along the way. So it's like, okay, so in the Safe Network, like, to start an exercise like this, to move forward to an implementation of what a society could look like with meritocracy, so to speak. So it's like, so your computer is set up in your room or in your basement, wherever, and then if there's going to be a tsunami that pulls you offline, well, it's your responsibility to defend that computer against the tsunami. And if the tsunami comes in and takes out your computer, then you don't get any more safe coins, and you're no longer upholding the meritocracy of the Safe Network, and you won't get any more coins, and you won't have any more access or any additional access to store more data with your coins from the computer. So then in a human one, it's kind of like what Brady brought up with this farm bot, which is fascinating. So imagine you had a person who, they set up the farm bot, and that's their contribution to the network in the town. So they're responsible with their farm bot to produce all the cilantro for the town. And another person with the farm bot is going to produce all the mint for the town, right? So if you don't uphold the cilantro, growing, you will lose out, and everyone loses out in respect. So so then you would be, I mean, in that case, you'd be excluded. I guess food is kind of like comes up as a controversial kind of thought process, because it's like, can you trust just some person that they're not going to grow the food just in case? And you can't. So it's kind of like a pretty serious dilemma, and I think it's important to get to that kind of conversation, because we're talking about our lives, right? So like, if you did form a farm bot, and you joined a group of farm bot folks, or a bunch of folks agreed that they have a farm bot society, and they each are responsible for growing some kind of produce. As long as you can reasonably assume that not everyone can fail, and you could reasonably guarantee that not everyone can fail, and even if they do all fail, that there's alternatives nearby, then it could work. Kind of like the safe network. The safe network works that way, that even though a whole country can lose power, the safe network doesn't fold. It can still function, because we can reasonably assume that other people around the world are still running the safe network. And then if all the computers around the world shut down, then we can reasonably assume that there's a huge problem well beyond the well beyond the safe network, well beyond the well into like humans. Like, humans have a calamity, so we're all about to die, or something like that. Maybe we're not all about to die, but somehow it just happens that we can't uphold the. But then again, it's the Earth we're talking about. Not everything can just disappear. It's just not supposed to. So
We
I
do
think.
have some counterproductive people in this world, though.
Yeah, but we're still here. That's the point. Like,
Yeah.
no matter how counterproductive people could become, and I think that with machines and automation, like, you'd have to go around and shut everything down. I mean, you'd have to go one by one and shut everybody down.
That's
And
the
as
power of distribution. I can't wait until the world looks more like that in general.
Well, you got to bear in mind, right, the moment. I mean, I don't know. I know there's far greater minds in this conversation than mine to tell me if I'm right or wrong here. But as I understand it, right now, because of the network, even at a tiny little macro level, that is actually a live network. Once this starts to scale up, it gets to the point, which is what we can argue it is now, that for them to switch this off, they'd have to shoot themselves in the heart themselves, because they'd have to switch everybody's internet connection off. And they know that if they ever did that, whoever these powers are, whoever was in control of it, they would just shoot themselves in they would like putting a heart through their vampiric hearts, a stake through their own hearts. This is what I'm saying. You can't. Innovation's always going to strive onwards, and I mean, to me, it's not really important about, we have arguments about whether whether it's going to fail or not fail. My bigger one is like Brady alluded to. It's like the singularity is looming at a very quick rate, and we've got to keep our edge. And right now, our edge as human beings is our creativity, and is our ability to have this sort of element of compassion. Now, maybe technology will have compassion, I don't know. But right now, we have the edge of creativity, because we can dream. The machine can't dream yet. That's the edge we have. Got to keep that bridge alive between the complexity of what's growing with technology and us as human beings. Because if we don't shape it, it's going to end up shaping us. And that's where we have got to have these conversations as human beings, because it's essential. Because if we don't, and we become just inherently lazy, this is how all things happen. It just rise and it just scythe us down. It's an analogy I've used before, which is, if you ever read up anything about the rise of AI, it's a very simple question that you pose to an intelligent an AI of any kind. You say to it, right, we're going to give it a very simple equation, something that just on the trivial part of edges of our lives that annoys us. Let's ask the AI to say, right, come up with a solution to spam. We give it to the AI, it comes back and it says, kill all humans. Because all humans are the problem because of spam, because they're the root of all problems. So this is why we got, that's a real I mean, if you read a lot about AI, that's one of the basic questions that, you know, even our most trivial thing we may ask an AI to do, it will come back with kill all humans. And the point being, if that's a very trivial answer, that's his answer to a trivial question, that will be like it will be. That's why, to me, all the questions on the side are great, but we've got to focus, which is what we've got right now, right in front of us with the SAFEnetwork and with the potential it's going to open, is a gateway into something that we can shape, and that's why I think we need to have this conversation, because we, as in this room, we all have the ability to be creative and we have the ability to dream, and that's the edge we have, and we've got to, that's where we can shape it, and that's, to me, is the inspiring part of where we live in right now. So all the questions on the edges, to me, are like, great, that's well and good, but can we just get on with you know, just shaping this and building this, please?
You know, I think something in my gut is telling me as AI really starts taking off and becoming a thing, I think we're going to have some kind of artificial hormonal system for artificial intelligence, or it's just not going to understand us, because we are very hormonal creatures. Every living being is hormonal. I mean, we connect with cats and dogs on a hormonal level, and if we can't connect with a computer on a hormonal level, we might have some problems on our hands. That's just something that's deep down inside me telling me that is a focus that needs to be looked at with AI. But again,
That's fascinating.
speculation.
Yeah. There's a subject called telegonia. It's very controversial, but and also not in the United States you'll never find any content about it. But the point about it is that what is around you is what, like even us talking on this Skype, we are genetically being mixed just because we see each other. It's just the way that the human is designed. And so I wonder, and something that I never explored and completely omitted all the time, which is, what is the computer exactly doing in terms of, so the computer doesn't have genetics.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? So maybe there really is no merger biologically between the human and the computer, but it might be, it's something that I never thought of until just now, and maybe I'll continue to explore that, in fact.
Can you share some kind of content on that? The telegonia is what you said?
Right, so it's completely absurd. It's the origins.
I like absurd things. Please
the,
share anything.
The origins are preposterous. I mean, they're totally politically incorrect and everything.
I love politically incorrect.
Okay. So just for once. So in Russia, they hosted, so it was totally closed, and you know, Russia was blocked off. You can't go to Russia basically for the most part, and the television was jammed, so you can't watch anything, or you can't listen to anything except what's offered. And obviously there were ways to get around that, but not very prevalent, and people didn't seek to go around them very much. But the thing is, in 1982, they decided to air the Olympics in Russia for the first time in history. So, but then there was a huge increase in birth of black babies in Russia, and there was no increase. So, like, this is where it gets politically incorrect and controversial. But the point is this: there's no way that there's no way that there were more black men in Russia during that time. There was no increase in number of black men in Russia, and there was no increase of marriages or anything that could have led to such a huge rise in black babies being born in Russia. And what happened was what the scientists had. So they followed the trail. They followed the trail to, like, how the hell could this have happened? And thousands of, like, experts concluded that the women gave birth to black babies from having watched the 1982 Olympics, where they saw black men competing, and they fell in love with and they just cherished the vision and everything, and so they gave birth to children that were not like their husbands, and just like, you know, and it was investigated very thoroughly, and that's it. So then they started a study called telegonia, and they discovered a whole onslaught of how humans interact genetically with other humans, how humans genetically interact with animals, the prevalence and the process of breeding humans with animals from a very long time ago. Even to this day, even Chinese are merging genetics with rabbits and humans, and they're
Well,
very proud of it. So,
I've seen jellyfish and cats, so it's not too far out of the question.
okay, so take all that and understand that there's huge evidence. It's highly probable that just from watching the TV, you will be, I mean, you get influenced
Well,
genetically.
well, we have mirror neurons. That's a huge part of mental development and every type of stimuli
Oh,
feasibly.
what is that called?
Mirror neurons, which
Mirror
is just
neurons?
yeah, that's just watching another human being or living creature for that matter. And
Hmm.
mirror neurons have a lot to do with empathy and emotional connection, and it's beyond the hormonal thing that I was talking about. It's just watching another
Mm-hmm.
living creature,
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
and you do alter your internal mental development and neural structure based on watching another living creature. So
Yeah.
that's not too far out of the question, in my opinion. Really, I
Yeah,
mean,
and yeah, in my experience, this is fascinating because in my experience, I learn everything by seeing from others. So if I'm in the room with an expert, I will become an expert, and it's only because of practicing just this is like if I emulate another expert, I will I mean in as many aspects as I can, so does my brain. So then I think and act and do as the expert does. And that's exactly how I learned to play tennis extraordinarily well. I mean, it's how I actually acquired a lot of the skills that I have today.
I know
Uh,
you kind of gave us that political incorrect warning there, but to be perfectly honest, I think that's what holds back a lot of conversations that allow us to move forward and discover some things that we don't know everything about the human mind. We know less about the human mind than we do our own universe, which is a little disturbing in a lot of ways. So uh, I think we have a lot to learn. So I don't mind a little bit of political incorrectness, especially if it can get the conversation moving on to anything. I mean, we're talking about open societies, open conversations, open feedback, open everything. So
mhm.
that's kind of part of it. So
Yeah, I would add
I
that
appreciate it.
yeah, I would add that having known this, that I know that if knowing that people are genetically influenced just by, you know, I mean, in any interaction with another person in any way. So then I realized like, well, maybe so there's like a whole, I mean, you could go through a whole list of characteristics of people, but I'm just thinking like, whereas I'm sincere, I'm pretty much naive, and I value youth, like into like I hope to never age if I can, or to prevent aging as much as possible. So then I want to emulate that to the world, and I want, oh, having known that, if so, I know that just by communicating with others, that I'm having this kind of influence, whether anyone likes it or not, and and then and then in turn, I can gain influence from others, and I hope that I'm emulating that. We should be sharing progressive information and progressive knowledge. So it's like I feel like it's important that people are involved in uh, in doing things together, because that way you can, I mean, you could really, like Hitler managed to convince millions of people to kill millions of people, but
Hmm.
Hitler could have also convinced millions of people to do millions of good things. So I don't think there's a bad thing to being influential, and I don't think it's a bad
You
thing to being helpful either.
well, there's a lot to that. I mean, there's been completely insane philosophers that everything they had to say was may have been a little crazy, but there is valid philosophy, and thinking outside of the box and being crazy allows you to actually move beyond uh, general generalizations and the kind of thinking that's well inside the box. And to be that crazy allows you to think. I mean, Charles Manson probably had some valid theories about life that if we actually looked at it, oh, okay, well, yeah, you're right. Maybe we should have thought about that. And that's part of getting beyond that political incorrectness and just saying, hey, let's just look at things like without any judgment and just listen to it. I mean, we're all human here. We can know what's a bunch of BS and what's just total insanity and what's what's actually a valid theory. I mean, it takes that craziness and out.
Yeah, something fascinating and awesome just dawned on me as well is that by disclosing this thing about telegonia and just saying like, look, okay, if you watch this video, you're going to be influenced genetically by all of us. And that's a disclosure. So it's like if you're watching this right now and you don't want to be genetically influenced, turn off immediately.
Yeah. Exactly.
and then go watch I don't know, Barney, and go get genetically influenced by Barney over there. Like
I don't know if that's genetics. I think that's pure brainwashing.
Okay, but right. Well, what I'm saying is like so by being knowledgeable and conveying the knowledge, so now it's like, okay, so now a person can make a real decision. Do I keep watching and understanding more? Or, and I think it's important that what a person does after, when they're, away from screen, I think is also important in shaping the influence of, like what kind of interaction you have. And so as long as, I think, yeah.
I was just going to say, on a side note, I haven't actually seen you till tonight, so it's interesting that you brought this up, and I've actually seen you face to face and met you face to face tonight. So it's a pleasure to meet you face to face and be genetically manipulated by you too.
Likewise. Yeah. I felt I had a good feeling about you when I heard your song 2 weeks ago almost. So I just knew that you're a sincere person, and I was glad that you came online again, and that's really important to me. I appreciate what you said, and
I'll try to
I
be
hope
here pretty consistent too. I enjoy everyone's company here, and Rich is one of my good friends, so you'll see me here. I enjoy everyone, and the people that I haven't met tonight. It's a pleasure to meet you, and if you want to turn on your cameras and genetically manipulate me, I won't complain.
I mean, I would sort of my point on the what you were just mentioning about the manipulation of people and how we all are. Where we are right now, and I think this is the I kind of saying that the point where I think not many people are really understanding is that, like I said, we're at the edge of shaping these things, and we have the ability to, like even manipulate everything in the future, and I think like you were saying, it's about, like you say, not only about checking yourself in as how you live and stuff like that, but it's, I mean, when we look back at history, this is always one of the things that fascinates me. When we look back at history, there's always the analogy to put people and go, oh well, one person came up with an idea and this other person came up with an idea. But what happened is all around the world, all these ideas, all, as you find out if you study a bit of history, all sprung up at the same time, because that's how the wave of momentum happens. And I think it's fascinating, really, what you were just mentioning then. This is where, like I said, we're at this edge at the moment, and I think one of the things that's really, again, this whole thing about with nature, against nature. One of the things that maybe that's why I'm looking forward to someone does it. Someone builds an app that basically the thing where we can really, like you said, Brady. One of the things that really confuses people and puts all these problems at the moment is this almost inefficient way that we have of communicating through words, and suddenly like language can get misconstrued, or suddenly language can get loaded, and if we can get to a point on a safe network where we can have, that's what I'm saying, to me, the most important app beyond N99, which is great, beyond any kind of GitHub or whatever, the most important app is someone to build is a Babel app. Someone that we can all just communicate in a method where none of our words are going to get misconstrued.
Well,
It's all about the intention that we're feeding.
I've got to interject there. I excuse if this seems creepy, but anyone who pops into a chat with me, I do a little bit of Googling. So, Paul, I did see you're involved with the Venus Project, and I know that's actually a running theme is about the inefficiencies of human communication and language. And I appreciate that this was brought up because that is an issue. I mean, language was developed by dictators through history that wanted very specific outcomes with societies and imperial systems, and we're still using these same languages. I mean, that's a fact. That's a reality. That's the way it is, and it is an issue. So I appreciate that you brought that up because that is an issue. And you're speaking of, well, like GitHub. I mean, we're talking about programming and mathematics. Mathematics is a language that can't really, it's harder to propagandize mathematics than it is any other spoken language. So it's interesting that we're here in the age of software taking over social planning.
Yeah, no, I agree, Brady, and I don't think it's, again, I mean, I don't have the arrogance to think that we're the first people to be here. I mean, to me, one of the pushes of ancient, a lot of ancient philosophies, whether it's the Greeks or the Chinese or even the Enlightenment of the Middle Ages, was always about the search for truth and beauty, which was the idea that, you know, truth could be designing something like a piece of artwork, you know, or like I say, a mathematical symbol or a design or a piece of architecture that sometimes, do you know what I mean, that in some ways the point I'm trying to make is that language is such an inefficient way, but we can all strive towards, you know, trying to show that truth in as many ways as possible, and that can be a lot of times can be lost in language, which is why if someone can go out there right now, and I put the call out here for months and months and months, if someone can go out and invent a Babel app, because I mean we're talking about things about what we are as potential as human beings. I mean I've mentioned this many times. I'm sure Rich has heard me say this many times. But when I lived down in Venezuela, man, I lived for months with guys in the Amazon who didn't know Spanish. So my Spanish was very small. Their Spanish was even less. A lot of our communication were through primarily body language. But I don't care. I'm willing to say this out on the screen. A lot of it was telepathic. We just knew. We had mind things. Now that may seem as like, oh, you can't. Well, I've witnessed that myself, and when you witness it yourself and you communicate with a human being on that level, and then you think, wait a minute, if we could all do that, and then we could move on and advance at a ridiculous rate, which we've all got the potential to do. It's just exploring and rewarding people who are going to, as Daniel said earlier on, or you know, the people who are. I want those people to be rewarded. I want someone on the Safe Network to think, oh, do you know what? It's an incentive of mine, and I'm going to be rewarded to invent a Babel app or to find out how we can telepathically communicate. That's how I want it to be. Because at the moment, the world is set up where everybody in academia, it suits their interest only to be very small-sighted and to be like, well, I'll just give facts that reinforce what I, as a school or as an education facility, that's what we want to stand up for, not the truth. And if we could get rid of those barriers, we could really advance really quickly. And I mean, I was telling Rich the other day, that's why I'm fascinated about the whole aquaponics one, because when little humans have had an ability without gaps. They've discovered immense things. I mean, I know the Russians were doing huge things. The people in America in the 60s, along with the Russians, along with psychedelics, were doing these amazing studies into plants and the effects they could have and how plants can interact with us and they can use communications and that all got lost because of this whole middleman process. So, I mean, that's why I meld it all together, and that's why I always say that someone can go out and invent a Babel app, then I'll fly the flag for you and I'll chuck you as many safe coins as I've got, because that would be a huge step towards the advancement of us as a species, to get rid of this horrible thing called language.
Middlemen are starting to get whittled away, and that's a huge blockade to progress. So here we go. I think the show has just begun.
Mm.
Hey, by the way, I said I was going to do this from home this next time because I did want to play you guys some music again with. I'm in my studio right now, so I got all my equipment. If it sounds a little higher quality, it's probably because it is, and you'll actually be able to hear the bass notes.
Oh, that's perfect. Well, while we're here and we just touched onto this, and it's something that me and Rich talked about, so I think I kind of want to, this, bring it out because I'm sure everyone in this conversation will be fascinated by what we're thinking of doing. And it was again really kind of inspired by something I know Brady's interested, and Rich sort of mentioned it, and it's kind of like a mutual interest of mine. So we're going to be starting a thing called SEED, which is an acronym for well, Rich, tell them the acronym what C stands for.
You're muted.
You go ahead.
Hi,
I don't know. Go ahead. Figuring that one out with you. Go ahead. What does it stand for?
Safe, effective, efficient, decentralized solutions.
Okay.
And or ecological solutions. Sorry, not safe, effective, ecological, decentralized solutions. And I think it's one of the things that we can really explore. And I'm going to open up we've got the ANTS meeting. I'm going to open up the same again because I think the whole area into food production, and I know it's something you're fascinated about, and again it was something when Rich mentioned it to me, it was something I thought I recalled the first conversation me and you had, Daddy, because it was something that you had spoken to about, obviously in relation to spacecraft and us getting off this planet and how we've got to work out how we decentralized food distribution and our understanding of food. So again, it's something we're going to be sort of starting. I might be sort of thinking of doing it in the intervening weeks between when we do ANTS meetings, because I think it's a sort of separate whole area that we can sort of spend hours and hours talking about. That's a separate issue from maybe our ANTS meeting. So I just thought I'd let everyone know right now, because I'm maybe aim to start this in the next sort of couple of weeks. So SEEDS. So that's safe, effective, ecological, distributed solutions. There you go.
I like it.
Right on. Is my mic picking up too much background noise?
Nah, you're all right.
Yeah, I wanted to mention, I said that I was against aging, but yeah, it's true. It's really, I'm against deterioration, not aging, actually. It's a misrepresentation of words. And I would thank Paul for pointing that out. And then mirror neurons is a fascinating thing. I didn't hear of those words before. And you guys know about Carlos Castaneda, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
And more important than Carlos Castaneda is the Don Juan, is what Don Juan had to convey. And he mentioned about what you don't know. I mean, what you can't say right now is because you lack the knowledge to say it right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so the teachings of Don Juan is always about being a warrior, and a warrior is always on the ready and in the know of what he needs to know at all times through silent knowledge. And the interesting thing about, I'm not saying I'm recommending Castaneda books, but I'm just saying what they're for is that they move your perception to a place that would remind you that there's something more than what the eye sees.
I think I'd recommend anything that's capable of doing that, to be honest.
Right. That's right. That's actually Don Juan would also recommend the same, and you would discover that reading a Castaneda book. But also, I think that Castaneda is misrepresented as a psychedelic and drug exploration novels, when in actuality, I've studied Castaneda books for several years, and not the ones that are about drugs and psychedelics. And I've been the most sober in my life when studying Castaneda books. So the reason I mention that is because I think people shouldn't discount them unnecessarily.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, everyone always asks me, "Are you related to Torrance McKenna?" And I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? Yeah, that's me. I'm that
Lawrence
guy.
McKenna?
Yeah, if you don't know who he is, he's along the same lines. So
Yeah.
Oh,
Go and check out him or his brother.
yeah, go
Because
check him out.
Dennis
And
is.
yeah, I'm not really related, but that's a question I get asked at least a few times a year.
well, on the subject of, so the thing that inspired me to mention that about Castaneda was mirror neurons.
Hmm.
So I understand that in society, like if you look at advertisement and there's people in the advertisement, what a human does is they identify the people in the advertisement for someone who they can relate to somehow.
Mhm.
And that's easily coming from this mirror neuron thing.
Hmm.
And so it's like the way that they advertise is that they put a person who looks like what you would identify with, and you identify with that person, and you identify with their actions and what they do. So
In
if,
terms of marketing, it's a little evil, to be honest.
Mm.
I've taken
well,
classes on marketing. It's nothing but evil
Mm.
propaganda.
mhm. um,
Sorry, I just.
I mean, that's true. I mean, that's true. Like, making people do things based on what you know drives them. And but I think I don't think everything is evil when oh wait for a second, Brady. I was saying I don't think it's evil when you have a good cause that you're trying to convince people of, and the only thing that, I mean, consider this, an educated society might also be educated how to respond to advertisements.
Well, I wasn't
And,
saying all propaganda is evil.
oh, okay, so
Some
that's true.
propaganda is it can be used for good or bad.
Right,
So
so
no.
that's true. So, let's dive into that for a second where um, imagine a society that is already trained how to respond to advertisements and marketing. So the
Hmm.
only way to get the message across is to use the same methods that they were taught how to use,
It's nurtured. Yeah.
right? Maybe there's no other way to reach a certain type of people,
Hmm.
and they still have to be reached. So it's like if all people are equal, then we still have to employ the same advertising and marketing techniques
Well,
to.
that's why when you're browsing Twitter or Facebook in the news and you see these really interesting characters bringing up current events and things, it's interesting because they're taking that technique. They're like, okay, well, you want a reality TV show? Then we're gonna do it on Twitter. Here you go.
Right, right, exactly. Yeah, truth tastes better.
Yeah, exactly.
That's propaganda. I don't want to hear it. Wait, that was good propaganda. Let me hear some more.
But no, one of the other things that I kind of did want to mention, and I again, and it seems kind of a million miles away from what we've been talking about, on some of the heady topics we've been speaking about. But I know that it's been a particular live issue over here, this week and stuff. But I think it's something that we could just sort of like, and I'd like to hear your thoughts and opinions. Just anyone really wants to chip in with this. It's like we know, and we kind of put in we sit here and fly the flag, knowing that the safe network is going to be the most secure, safe. That's the whole point of the essence of what we're standing up for, yeah.
Hmm.
And we fly the flag for this. But like in everything else in life, it's like it's brilliant. We've got the most secure network. We've always got to look at the weak point. And I spend a lot of time with like everything in life because maybe my brain's wide. I think, right, what's the weak point? Where's the weak point? Where's the weak point? Where's it vulnerable to? And ultimately, this is always going to be vulnerable down to, great. It's going to be down to human beings. And the vulnerable then comes down to us and putting passwords in. And that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, great. It's great having a safe network that's got all this, unhackable stuff. But if someone can just, copy your free passwords and then take your account and still take everything you've got on it, then it's going to destroy a lot of trust in the network itself even before we launch. So I think before we're at the actual live stage, I think it's maybe something we can discuss about how we can propagate into the world out there, about how people can change their mind, different mindset about their passwords. Because as we know, there's going to be one, maybe
Well,
three set of
well,
passwords to get onto the safe network. We need to sort of think of ways that encouraging people rather than just putting, because there was put it this way, I'll give you an example. There was a an example given over here in the British press the other day that 80% of people in the UK, their password is password 1.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's an issue here, though. The issue really is identity. We're talking about a new way of identifying yourself. I mean, what is GPG? I mean, GPG is a way of identifying yourself. Your password is a way of identifying yourself. Your two-factor keys are a way of identifying yourself. The issue we're talking about is identity in this world that's developing.
You know, one of the things that I'm reminded of is when EJ was on. He was talking about creating passwords. Hold on a second. I don't know if you can hear me over the background noise, but he was talking about using something called, what was it? Social passwords. Do you remember?
Oh, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
yeah. Every time you do something, then it's part of creating your encryption key. Yeah.
So has anybody else got any other thoughts other than, I mean, do you know what I mean? Because I just think it's something that's worth talking about, because I just know, as much as we sit here and we have all these ideas, I just know that you've got to think that if what we're striving towards happens, and that you know, everybody is on this, as much as us outliers and us outsiders on it now, but you know what I'm saying, but knowing that 80% of them are using password 1 as their password, we've got to maybe kind of think, well, how can we make it almost simple for people not to have that? Because it's, I mean, yeah, you're right, Danny. It's funny, man, because it's so easy for people to do you know what I mean? When it's scary, but people are like that. It goes back to this point. People are lazy, and people will just go, "Oh, password 1."
I could think of like some pretty funny circumstances where the password is the same thing for everything, but you know, that's nothing I want to talk about more. But the that's hilarious that 80% of people using a password 1.
Those are the people without an identity I was talking about. If you choose password 1, you should probably work on your identity and personality a little.
Yeah, but I mean, I bring it up, like I say, I bring it up because I'm aware that if we're going to offer if we're offering the world the greatest, you know, innovation that's probably been around in our lifetime, we're offering this to the world, and the whole world jumps on it, but everybody just gets disillusioned because it's like, oh, this is no different. I'm all my stuff stolen, and it's like, well, it's not the network stuff their fault that stuff is stolen, but we've got to be aware that, you know, people may be like this, so we've got to think, right, that's a point of weakness. The point of weakness is, again, it's us humans. We are the weak point, so we've got to work out a way of making us strong, so we're not bringing down the network by our stupidity.
So education.
I thought that was being human. I think we just destroy stuff and break stuff and step on stuff and bring out technologies and throw them out there and force them down
That's
people's
because of
throat.
bad influences. That's because of bad influence. But I think, to answer the question, I think Francis is listening. It's a good thing that people should be well known to make a good password versus, like, you know, just casually brushing it off, saying, you know, obviously don't make it password 1. More like, hey, everybody, big red letters, do not make your password.
I'm sorry. Can I ask what you guys think of, like, things like LastPass and KeyPass and things that generate passwords, and it's basically a random number generator that can't quite be 100% random.
Yeah, I mean, personally, LastPass, I'm not a big fan, and they got hacked recently, but apparently it wasn't a problem, like it wasn't an issue. But I think, like, password generating services are risky if they're centralized.
Yeah.
And then we have things like Bitcoin, which is a decentralized password generator.
Yeah.
But also prone to vulnerabilities because of the source that generates the random password. So it's like, Brady, think about it like this. If you decided to base your password on maybe it has 1,000 different versions, of itself. But if you use the number 0 to generate that password, then another person can use the number 0, generate all the passwords, and then they figured out your password. So you need to figure out something that's super random, super not likely to be picked again in the future to really get a very random thing, and that's prone to vulnerabilities. So it's almost like in some circumstances, you're better off picking password 1 if someone's going to go and reverse engineer how the passwords are generated if you use the password generator.
Yeah.
So I think what I was mentioning earlier, I think I'm going to be saying it again, but maybe I didn't say it before, but I think should be in like big red letters saying something ultra unique. If your password is password 1, you're going to get hacked and everything is at risk. Make sure you have a very serious password. And even dedicated videos to just only the account creation process where, like, think about it, we do a screencast of someone logging into the SAFEnetwork, and instead of just casually brushing it off that you shouldn't put a simple password, we should say, hey, pay attention very closely right now. Make a very crazy, serious password. Write it down and don't forget.
Well, it was
Yeah,
interesting
that's right.
you brought up the fact that Bitcoin is a decentralized password generator, and
Yeah.
that's neat. Not a lot of people quite think beyond. Well, still, they're still not thinking beyond the price, which is frustrating as hell. But that's neat that you can mention that, because I mean, we have to start rethinking the way we secure everything to the point it's absurd. I'll be perfectly honest with you. Like a private key method that I was actually trying to think of in terms of security, because even just writing some people write their private keys down, some people keep them in complicated encryption methods through multiple different programs on their computer, some people do analog encryption. I mean, shit, I do analog encryption. This book right here, this book, there's tiny little pages and numbers and random things that only I would do because they're my favorite passages in this book that relate to my private key that I can actually pull up, yet it's only half the private key there, and the other half is stored in other things that are even more complicated. That's a form of analog encryption, and that's something human beings need to start thinking a lot about, because that's still an option. Our brains still do function. And a lot of people, I think they rely on password generators too much. They don't think about the fact that you could write a song, and part of your private key could be strewn about several different songs depending on what keys you chose and what different notes you chose, what words you wrote for the song, and family members that it was written to, and the first letter of their name. And I don't know, this is what I do. I mean, let's make encryption really freaking complicated so you don't ever get my private keys.
Well, Brady, I think it's fascinating. I don't know if you're aware of, but in Japanese sort of like Middle Ages, that when the rise of the sort of the the samurai and stuff like that, they outlawed Christianity, and obviously, so if a monk was stopped along the road, they were found that and the samurai discovered they were Christian, they would just behead them on the spot. Yeah. So basically, it meant that people who were Christian in Japan at that time had to find out ways of trying to communicate and know that so they can communicate with other people. Say, look, other Christians or other people that were of the Christian sect say we are Christians. So they come up with and again, I recommend people looking. I'll put a link into the site when we put it up on the thread of magic mirrors, which is the idea that you'd have a mirror that when you looked into it, it would just look like your reflection. But because of the back was done, which is a really tedious process, the craft of it is immense. But you could hide a reflection, so when the light went through it, it would beam a picture of Christ or whatever on the wall above. Now, what my point I'm trying to make is this idea: if 400 or 500 years ago in ancient Japan they can come up with a magic mirror, well, I'm sorry, but we're a bit more kind of, advanced than that. We can come up with better solutions, and that's what always gives me inspiration. I'm thinking, man, like, they can do this back in the day, and they didn't understand electricity. If we can't find the solutions, so maybe we need to do, that's why I ask people like in this conversation, because I think, well, what I mean, we need to find magic mirror solutions to our own, like you said, Brady, our own personal encryption, because it's going to come more and more down to, like I say, with the only thing we've actually got uniqueness of us all is this what goes on in here. And until they come up to a system where they can tap into our minds, and God help us if we live in that world, because that's what we fight for. I don't want to live in that world where they're programmed into my brain.
You don't want pre-crime? Come on now, pre-crime is going to be wonderful. It's going to prevent all crime. It's going to be great. That was sarcasm. Okay, I'm just
Yeah, the flaw is perception, so it's about our perception.
Yeah, I just think it's important that's what I'm saying. I'm always amazed, really, that that these kind of conversations are left down to groups of individuals like us, and you won't. We know why. I'm not being naive and going, oh, I expect to hear this on CBS. I'm not. I know that's never going to happen. But the point being is, it's so important when you realise that. Maybe it's more relevant to me because I'm only a few hundred miles away from what happened last night in Paris, and to me, the light of this conversation can easily be snuffled out. I mean, it doesn't take a lot, and that's why, to me, that's why I think it's really important that these discussions have about, and as you said, Brady, we understand a bit more about, because I think generally we've all been kind of become too complacent in our own lives about everything in around the world around us, and we don't understand that basically, I mean, the analogy, and it's a great one, it's a great analogy that Daniel, I know him, Immortech, he came on the podcast and he used this. It was a great analogy. He said, we're all just chucked out of a plane, and first thing we've got to do is find the parachute while it's in the air, then we've got to grab it, then we've got to put it on, and hopefully come up for a soft landing. That's the experience of life.
Some people are just thrown out there without a parachute. They just hit the ground and have to try and recoup.
Yeah, and the trouble is, my friend, I don't know if you ever saw, but there's too many Peggy Hills in this world that end up coming falling out of a plane and landing and walking away. But that's my old King of the Hill. Go and watch King of the Hill if you want. Go and watch the episode when Peggy falls out of a plane. There's too many people that survive the plane crash, man.
It's all right, but they have a gimp leg now. At least we figured something out. We grew wings or something. I don't know. Get innovative.
Yeah, but I mean, the point I'm trying to make on a serious level, I just think it's really crucial that we, like I say, we do take these principles back, like understanding what our real privacy is, understanding, because this is what I'm trying to say, and this is why it kind of reflects about where we are in the society right now. That if we don't stand strong for these. The idea of being privacy, and that your thoughts can be your thoughts, and that you have the right to keep hold of them, and if you don't, and you just bend over and bend over and bend over, well, man, I'm in Europe. We've lived under fascism for we've had two big long periods of fascism, and it's coming now. I mean, that's I'm telling people now. I mean, I've been saying it for a while, but the backlash is what we're going to have in Europe is going to be an extreme right wing fascist everywhere. You're going to, because I live in Europe. We're seen as these tolerant beings, but we're like all human beings. We're going to snap at some point, and that's what I'm saying. We're fighting. As much as we shine the light for a really positive element about what's going to be born in this world. There's some dark nature in this world, and some dark people do some dark stuff, and that's because people aren't aware. This is why I keep going back to it. We've all got to be aware that each one of us, you are the brains of the central nervous system, and we've all got to come to that realization, because this is what we control, and we can't just allow that to be taken away from us all. And that's why you said, Brady, it's all about understanding our own privacy, and taking it all back, taking some simple steps back. That's what I mean. That's why I think it's really important.
The problem is it takes a little creativity to get that to happen with the disjointed tools, ideas, and methods we currently have. So I think if you're creative, you should probably knock on your neighbor's door and say, "Hey, look what I discovered. You should check it out."
Yeah, that's why we're here, is to be organized, not
on our doors.
Yeah, I think the purpose why we're here is because we're trying to be organized and not disorganized.
Yeah.
And that's why I value so much to come and meet up on this Saturday.
It's hard though. You do have a lot of balkanization and very polarized ideas and ideals specifically. That it's frustrating because it just you think, okay, well, this should be like this. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be great, and then you just have that different perspective that just pulls you in a different way, and you're like, well, it kind of turned out like I wanted to, but kind of not.
Well, I would mention Paul. He wrote a comment. He said, "What if they aren't your thoughts but our thoughts together? Now who is
Yeah.
being judged?" Right.
Yeah.
So that's something I thought a lot about and very thoroughly, and I understood that not everything that I've been doing came from me, and not everything that I was thinking came from me. So the only solution to that, or the only discovery to make from there, is to be in a place where outside influences cannot enter my mind, and I can really figure out what really goes through mine.
hmm
And so now when I enter society back in, I'm myself. And while people's thoughts will start migrating into my brain, I know the difference between mine and I know the difference between what just entered. Because when you're born, you're probably pretty clear. Or when you're in the womb, you're clear. Then when you come out of the womb, you start realizing, wow, so many thoughts. Maybe, and you never think they're not yours in the first place.
hmm
And then you have to let the crowd out of the halls so that you could see what's left when the crowd has vacated your great hall of a mind. And
The
then
collective intelligence has its strengths and weaknesses. What you're talking about is taking a step back from that and understanding the difference
mhm,
in the fact that there is power within the individual
yeah,
and it is overlooked in a unfortunately more often than not these
well
days.
then I can put a filter, or not a filter, but more like a I can put, so there's a bunch of lobbyists in the brain that come in from outside, right? And they're
Yeah.
put there by teachers, put there by authorities, by experiences and things like that.
hmm
And not all experiences are necessary. Some have been caused and enforced. They weren't done because they're necessary. They're just done to create a certain effect. So in order to vacate those filters, those thoughts, you have to get them out somehow. So if you give time, they can exit. And then you could see that if they come back, you could see, so that's what that was. It's like, that's where that came from. See what I mean? It's like, and then you could choose to accept or reject, because now you can identify what that thought was. And then you could be yourself, and then you could choose to accept. So you almost have a personal, real filter versus a acquired filter from others.
hmm
Yeah. I would
Well,
mention, yeah, I think I'll get to the editor and write some codes now. I think,
that's
um,
cool. I don't know. We obviously want to end with your track there, Brady. Which again, I'll hand over to you in a minute. You can give us the explanation of what it's called, what inspired it, and stuff like that. But
Okay.
obviously, I kind of we kind of covered both the areas that I kind of mentioned that I'd like to talk about. Is there anyone out? And again, because this being an open conversation, is there anything else anyone wants to chip in, discuss? Because we're all here, and this is the present moment. So let's. And if not, we can go over to Brady. But I'm opening it up. If anyone wants to say anything, this is your moment.
yeah, I wanted to mention that maybe for the next ants, I would see how far I get down the road, but it would be cool to have a little voting application that we can test out, and kind of like we can make a decision and see experience how that might work. And I think it's something important to me too. I mean, if you guys don't mind, I would borrow you to test that
Sure.
system.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And the other one, I just want to give people a bit of a heads up that obviously before the next ANTS meeting, and on the Thursday the 26th of November, Nick Lambert's coming on this podcast. So if anyone wants to sort of raise any questions or anything they particularly like to ask Nick, and I know you can all ask him on the the forum. I know he's an open guy, but if there's anything particularly you want me to sort of raise, because I just like to point in direction. Feel free. Just let me know. But that's Thursday the 26th, and again, maybe go and tell as many people as you possibly can to sort of point them towards that direction, because as I often say, I don't really know much, but someone like Nick is the kind of real, we can tap into some real knowledge, and more people that can understand, get to see that kind of conversation, the better. So I'm just giving a heads up. So again, I've had my piece, and like I said, well, I'm willing to hand over to Brady unless there's anything else. Rich, is there anything else you want to say, my man?
No, I don't have anything to add. I guess we just plan for the next one will be in 2 weeks. And
2 weeks time.
Quick question.
I would kind of like the seats to be on the same day myself. It's easier if I could, like maybe do it like an hour of ANTS or an hour and a half event. I know we don't like to like give an artificial shut off, but we could just start and stop again, right? Because I know you like to divide up the podcast into so they're differentiated. So we could just start and stop, like give it a half-hour break and then come back. Or
sounds good to me.
Break. Yeah.
Sounds good to me, Rich. Well, that sounds good to me. That sounds a great plan. If everyone's okay with that, I'm happy to implement that for after the next ANTS meet, which is on the 28th. So if that's where everyone's, go on.
I was gonna say, is there a way to open up this chat to like the public? Because I, excuse me, I didn't have an invite earlier, and I was trying to chat with you guys. Is there a way to open that so the public, even if they're not in the call or in the hangout, if they can talk in the chat?
I believe there is, but I'll do some I'll do some research into that. It's just that honestly, way back in the day we used to have it open, but. Yeah, maybe I know there is a facility to do it, but
did it get ugly when it was open? Do you not want to do that?
No. I think it's right. It's one of those tools. It's right in some occasions, and I think maybe in a kind of seeds or an ANTS meeting they're fine. But obviously, when you're doing a one-to-one conversation, last thing you want to have, just like normal life. I always equate this to a campfire, and if we're just sitting around like a group of men around a campfire, and there was some little kid kept biting in and going, he'd be like, oh, whatever, but whatever. There would soon come a point where you just pick him up and throw him in the ocean and say, well, whatever, man. Do you know what I mean? And that's how I feel about open chats and conversations. Okay. But I think you're right. In a seeds meeting, and I know that they do it. So anyway, mate, I keep saying this is when people listen to this thing like time becomes a loop. Well, time becomes a loop. Brady, tell us about this song, and we'll finish the podcast, my man.
All right. This song was actually it was inspired by everyone who's involved in open societies and just starting to distribute the social planning specifically is a big one for me, allowing people to actually participate in their fate and their life and in a very direct kind of way. And this song is kind of about the anger that boils up and develops from the lack of ability to do that. And if you do have any capacity to do it on your own, you're still looking at billions of people in the world who are still subject to modern day slavery and invisible walls and prisons that are just created by societal structures. And this is about the anger that kind of boils up from that, and the fact it's kind of written from the perspective of the person in that space, because everyone's been in a situation where they have invisible walls that you need to tear down or are incapable of in that moment and feel trapped. And that's the trapped feeling in the song. So here you go. Let me know how it sounds.
Perfect. Well, just before we finish, I want to thank Francis, I want to thank Paul, I want to thank you, Brady, and I want to thank you, Rich, for and you, obviously, Daniel, for making the time tonight, because I know that all our time is precious. So it's been a very inspiring conversation as always, and I want to thank you all for your time. And well, can't think of anything about it. Just remember, people, that life is people.
Can you guys hear that?
Myself
Oh, wait.
Mate, Brady, we can't hear you. Killed the
Oh.
mic, man. Brady.
Oh, sorry. I thought I had it on a separate line. I'm used to my equipment. Sorry. It's all right. It'll play that verse again. Set it up, dust it off. It's only your broken heart that can't break it for me. They can't break me. They can't break me. There's nothing to see, I'm already leaving. Just to be at ease, I see no reason. You can face your fear, with the finger pointed at me, both directions. Bleed on, you know you've ever done. Standing in the mirror, what have you have to fear? It's me, now I'm taking over. Don't settle for the light is burning on the midnight oil. They can't take it from me. Set it up, dust it off. It's only your broken heart. They can't break it from me. They can't break me. They can't break me. Standing on the side of the line that you can't see. There's times in life, there's only one right there can be. Your soul can't take it now, so don't forget it how. Better life and you bleed. Sinking in the deep. There's a fire to see. I'm gone, and I'm gone, and I'm gone, and I'm free. You got yourself all worked up in the way out, feeling like a disease. If I could get a hold of myself, oh, I could break free. I could break free. I could break free. I actually have the music up on